The night sky above Earth was never quiet. Stars glittered like diamonds, but hidden between them were ships. Massive alien vessels drifted in the dark, watching the blue planet below. For weeks, Earth's governments had tracked strange signals. They knew something powerful was coming, but they never expected this. The alien queens had arrived. They were rulers of a vast galactic empire, feared in every corner of the universe. No species dared to stand against them. Their fleets had conquered worlds, crushed armies, and enslaved civilizations. Now their eyes were fixed on Earth, a planet small in size, but full of strange resilience. Inside a hidden base under the mountains, human leaders gathered. Generals spread maps across the table. Scientists whispered about new weapons. Everyone prepared for the worst, they thought. The alien queens wanted resources, slaves, or domination. But the truth was stranger than anyone could imagine. Far above, in the command chamber of the alien flagship, Queen Seraphira stood tall. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver. Her eyes glowed with cold fire. She looked down at Earth through a giant viewing screen. Her generals spoke of invasion, numbers, and destruction. But her attention drifted to something else, something unusual. On one of the Earth surveillance feeds, a small creature walked across a park. It had short legs, a wrinkled face, and a curly tail. It stopped, sneezed, and then looked directly into the camera. The queen froze, her breath caught. Her generals noticed the change and fell silent. "What is that?" she whispered. The generals followed her gaze, confused. "It is called a pug," one of the scientists answered nervously after scanning the Earth data. "A pug?" The queen repeated slowly, the word foreign yet strangely powerful in her mouth. Her eyes softened, something no one had ever seen before. Back on Earth, in a quiet neighborhood, the pug's owner had no idea what was happening. He simply walked his pet, laughing as the little dog chased after leaves. To him, it was an ordinary moment. To the alien queen, it was a discovery that shook her empire. The human leaders in the underground base argued about weapons, missiles, lasers, defense shields. All ideas circled around destruction. But far above, the queen was not thinking of war anymore. She was thinking of the pug. A strange warmth filled her chest, a sensation she had not felt in centuries. The alien queens were known for their icy hearts. They ruled with fear. They never knew affection. In their empire, weakness was punished, emotions were forbidden. But this little Earth creature carried something invisible, something the queens had secretly longed for: unconditional love. "Bring me more images," the queen commanded sharply. Though her voice trembled slightly, her generals scrambled, pulling feeds of humans playing with dogs, hugging them, laughing. Every image made her chest ache more. Her hand trembled as she touched the screen, staring at the wrinkled face of the pug. The generals exchanged nervous looks. They had seen her destroy planets without blinking. Now they saw her smiling on Earth. The pug barked at a butterfly, completely unaware of the galactic drama it had caused. The human diplomat preparing for first contact had no clue that the most powerful weapon Earth had was not a missile or a machine. It was sitting in his backyard, snoring peacefully on the couch. The first ripple of fate had begun. The alien queen who once crushed worlds with fire now hesitated. Her heart pulled in a direction no war plan had predicted. The generals tried to speak, but she silenced them with a raised hand. "Prepare for landing," she ordered, not with the voice of a conqueror, but with the curiosity of someone chasing a secret. The stage was set. Earth believed an invasion was coming, but what was truly coming was something far stranger. The destiny of humanity was about to change forever, and it all began with the wrinkled face of a pug. The human leaders sat deep inside the mountain base, waiting for a signal. The skies were no longer safe. Alien ships floated above every major city, their shadows covering the land. Panic spread across the world, but one man prepared for something different. His name was Daniel Reeves, a young diplomat chosen to speak on behalf of humanity. He was calm, brave. But even he could not imagine what was about to happen. Daniel had a habit of never leaving his pug named Buster behind. The little dog followed him everywhere, snorting and wagging his curly tail when Daniel was called to the meeting site. He carried Buster in his arms, thinking nothing of it. The guards at first objected, but Daniel insisted. He is harmless, just a companion. No one knew that this harmless companion was about to become the center of the galaxy. The alien Queen's ship descended like a burning star. It landed with a roar, shaking the ground, dust rising into the air from the ramp. Queen Seraphira stepped down, her presence commanding silence. Her silver skin shimmered under the light. Her eyes glowing like two suns, humans trembled, soldiers held their weapons tightly. But Daniel stood tall, holding Buster. The Queen's gaze swept over the humans without care, until her eyes stopped. She froze. Her mouth slightly open, her burning gaze softening, there in Daniel's arms. The pug stared back at her, wrinkled face tilted, tongue sticking out. The Queen's generals exchanged worried looks. Their mighty ruler was distracted again, but Seraphira took a step forward, her attention locked on the little creature. "What is this?" she asked, her voice echoing through the chamber. Daniel swallowed nervously, unsure what to say. This is my pug. His name is Buster," he replied slowly. "Pug," the Queen whispered, as if tasting the word. Her eyes softened even more, and for the first time in her reign, she reached out her hand. Daniel hesitated, but Buster jumped down and waddled toward the towering Queen. The entire room gasped. Soldiers raised their weapons, expecting disaster. But instead, Buster sniffed at the Queen's silver boots, wagging his tail. Then, without fear, he barked once and rolled on his back, asking for a belly rub. The Queen bent down, her long silver fingers brushing against the little dog's fur. A sound filled the chamber, something no one thought possible. The Queen laughed. It was soft, but real, echoing in the hall. Her generals were horrified. Their unshakable queen was showing weakness. But to the humans, it was a miracle. Daniel's heart raced. He realized something incredible. The alien queen, who could destroy planets, was now completely focused on a dog. This was no ordinary meeting anymore. This was the beginning of a secret advantage, one that no alien mind could resist. The Queen stood again, holding Buster carefully in her arms. Her icy aura faded. Her voice no longer carried the same cold power. "You will tell me everything about this creature," she demanded, though her tone trembled with fascination. Daniel nodded quickly, hiding his shock. "Yes, Your Majesty, but perhaps we could talk about peace at the same time," he suggested. The generals hissed in protest, whispering of weakness, warning her of human tricks. But the Queen silenced them with a glare, still stroking Buster's fur. The little dog yawned and licked her silver cheek, making her freeze again. She did not push him away. Instead, her lips curved into another rare smile. The humans watched in awe, realizing they had just witnessed the impossible. The first contact between Earth and the alien empire had not been through weapons or power. It had been through loyalty, innocence, and love. The pug had done what armies could not. The Queen's heart, locked for centuries, had opened, and with it, the balance of power in the galaxy shifted. The chamber was silent after the Queen's laughter. Generals shifted uncomfortably. Soldiers whispered. Humans stared in disbelief. No one in the galaxy had ever seen Queen Seraphira smile. And yet here she stood, holding a pug as if it were the most precious treasure in existence. Daniel's mind raced. He knew this was not just strange. It was history. The Queen who destroyed empires was now distracted by a small Earth creature. But he also sensed danger, because if the humans noticed this weakness, the generals surely noticed too. They were loyal. But their loyalty was built on fear, not love. And fear turned quickly into suspicion. That night, in the alien flagship above Earth, the generals gathered secretly. They whispered in low voices, their eyes filled with worry. "The Queen is different," one said. "She is softening," another replied. If the humans discover this weakness, our empire could collapse, the oldest general hissed. They all knew the truth. The Pug had awakened something their kind had buried long ago. Alien queens were not born to love. Their species had evolved through dominance, control, and cold ambition. Affection was considered a disease, emotions a distraction. But Seraphira's heart was trembling, and for the first time in her long life, she did not fight it. She held Buster in her arms, alone in her chamber, and whispered words no one could. Here Daniel, meanwhile, returned to the human base with a shaken mind. He could not stop thinking of the moment he saw the Queen smile. What if this is their weakness? He asked himself, what if Pugs, what if love could stop an empire? It sounded ridiculous, but deep down he felt the answer was yes. The next meeting came quickly. This time Seraphira arrived with no cold commands, no threats of war. Instead, she asked Daniel questions, endless questions about Earth's animals, about companionship, about loyalty. Her generals grew restless, trying to drag the talks back toward politics and resources. But she ignored them, her attention fixed only on the human and his Pug. "Tell me," she said one afternoon, "why does this creature stay with you, even though it is small and weak?" Daniel answered carefully, "Because he loves me, Your Majesty, and because I love him." The Queen frowned. "Confused, love," she repeated, as if the word itself was alien. "It is not control, not power, not survival." Daniel explained softly, "It is giving without expecting anything back." Her silver eyes widened slightly, and for a moment she said nothing, just stroked Buster's fur as he slept in her arms. But while she listened, her generals plotted. They feared what love could do. If the Queen continued down this path, their iron empire would fracture. Already whispers spread among the soldiers. Rumors that the Queen was bewitched by a human pet. Whispers turned into questions into doubts. An empire built on fear could not survive if its queen showed her heart. Daniel noticed the tension. He knew danger was close. But he also saw something else. The Queen's heart was opening wider each day. The Pug was more than a weakness. It was a bridge. Through that bridge, maybe peace was possible. But bridges could be burned if the generals decided to act. One evening, the Queen dismissed her guards and stood with Daniel alone. She looked at him, her voice softer than he ever thought possible. "In my world, weakness is death," she confessed. "But this creature, when he looks at me, I do not feel weak, I feel alive." Daniel nodded, his heart pounding. Then maybe weakness is not weakness at all. Maybe it is strength. The Queen's eyes shimmered, and for the first time in centuries, she allowed herself to believe. The hidden weakness was no longer hidden. It had a wrinkled face, short legs, and a wagging tail. The fate of the galaxy now rested on whether the Queen's heart could survive her own generals, and whether humanity was brave enough to protect the very thing that had saved them. The great hall of the human base was filled with tension, alien. Guards stood like statues, their glowing armor pulsing faintly. Human soldiers faced them nervously, their fingers tight on their rifles. And in the middle of this heavy silence, something unexpected happened. Queen Seraphira stepped forward, her tall figure glowing with silver light. In her hands rested Buster, the little Pug, snoring softly against her chest. The Queen, feared across galaxies, was carrying him as if he were a royal jewel. Gasps filled the room. For the humans and aliens alike had never seen such a sight. Daniel watched carefully, his heart racing. This was not the cold Queen who had once threatened to crush Earth. This was someone new, someone fragile. She turned to him, her voice softer. Then a whisper of wind. "Does he trust me?" she asked, stroking the Pug's wrinkled forehead. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. He trusts you completely." The Queen's lips trembled, as if the weight of that word pressed against her soul. Trust. Her empire had never known it. Her generals had never offered it. Her people had never lived it. For them, only fear held order. But now this tiny creature trusted her without hesitation. Buster suddenly woke and yawned, stretching his little paws. Without fear, he climbed up toward her shoulder and licked her glowing cheek. The queen froze, her general stiffened in horror, but instead of pushing him away, Seraphira laughed again, a sound soft and bright. The humans stared in shock, unable to believe their ears. The most feared woman in the galaxy was bonding with a dog. Daniel saw the danger and the opportunity both. The generals whispered among themselves, their eyes sharp with fury, but the queen was lost in the moment. Her fingers traced gently through Buster's fur, her glowing eyes damp with emotions. "Long buried, I never knew such warmth," she whispered. "More to herself than to anyone else," Daniel answered carefully. "Maybe that's what your people need. Maybe that's what you need." The words struck her like a blade and a cure at the same time. For centuries, she had believed that emotions made her weak, but the pug's love did not weaken her. It gave her strength she had never imagined. She stood straighter, her silver aura pulsing softly, her hand steady as she held the tiny dog. This bond was no accident. It was a crack in the wall of her empire. Through that crack, light was entering. Her generals finally dared to step forward, their voices sharp. "Your Majesty, this is dangerous," one said. "You are lowering yourself." "Before these humans," another growled. But Seraphira turned her head slowly, her glowing eyes burning with something new. "Silence," she commanded. And for the first time her voice carried not coldness, but fire. The generals bowed, but their hearts filled with secret rebellion. The humans exchanged glances, realizing that something powerful had shifted. The queen was no longer only their enemy. She was something in between, still dangerous, but also touched by something real. Daniel's thoughts raced. If this bond grew stronger, maybe Earth could survive. Maybe they could turn invasion into alliance. But he also knew the generals would never allow it. Later, in private, Seraphira walked with Daniel under the night sky. Buster trotted between them, chasing shadows for a moment. She was not a queen, not a conqueror, just a woman seeing stars. With new eyes, she asked Daniel softly, "Do all humans love this way, without fear?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Not all, but enough to make it real. Enough to make it worth fighting for." She stopped, looking down at the pug rolling happily in the grass. Her silver eyes glowed with an emotion that had no name in her language. The bond was complete. She was no longer only ruler of an empire. She was now something else, something greater and more dangerous. She was a queen who had tasted love, but in the shadows, her generals watched, their hearts burning with fear and anger. They knew if this bond grew stronger, their empire would crumble. And they whispered to each other of betrayal, of taking control, of ending the weakness before it spread. The queen, however, walked on, unaware of their whispers, her hands reaching down to hold the little creature who had changed everything. The unexpected bond had been formed, and with it, the galaxy would never be the same again. The days after the queen's strange laughter were unlike anything Earth had ever known. There were no missiles fired, no cities destroyed, no ultimatums delivered. Instead, the alien queen kept asking for meetings, and in every meeting, her eyes searched only for Buster, the pug. It was as if the entire war had been paused for a small dog, with a wrinkled face and a wagging tail. Daniel understood something the others had not. This was not a distraction. This was a chance. The queen was powerful, but she was vulnerable in a way her generals hated and her empire feared. If humans could nurture this weakness, they might turn the tide of history. So Daniel crafted a plan, not of weapons, but of trust. During the next negotiation, he arrived not with documents, not with threats, but with something different. 3 more pugs, each small, playful, and full of life. The room fell silent when the animals waddled in, their little paws tapping on the cold metal floor. The alien generals hissed in disapproval, their eyes glowing with anger. But the queen gasped softly, her lips parting as joy swept across her face. "They are many?" she asked in disbelief, her voice trembling. Daniel smiled. "Yes, Your Majesty. There are thousands on Earth, perhaps millions. The queen bent down, her silver hair falling forward as two of the pugs licked her glowing hands. Her chest rose and fell quickly, her cold mask breaking further. The generals looked horrified. But Daniel knew it was working. The humans began to push the strategy further. Where once they would have hidden their pets, now they brought them forward. Every time the alien queen arrived, there were pugs waiting, wagging tails and happy barks, filling the hall. At first, it seemed harmless, but soon it became more. The queen would spend hours with them, ignoring her generals, forgetting her war plans. Daniel spoke carefully, weaving words into her fascination. Peace would give you more time with them, he suggested softly. War will only take you away from what makes you smile. Her silver eyes flickered with conflict, but the pugs pressed against her, as if answering for him, and slowly, her resolve began to change. The generals grew desperate. They warned her again and again. This is weakness, this is poison. The humans are tricking you. But the queen silenced them. Each time, her arms wrapped around the little creatures she could no longer resist. Her empire was watching, whispers spreading through the fleet. Soldiers asked themselves in secret, how can a dog undo the strongest woman in the galaxy? Yet the answer was plain affection, something so simple, yet so unstoppable. The humans realized their strategy was working faster than they imagined. They did not need to fire weapons or sacrifice cities. They only needed to let the bond grow stronger, but strategy was always a dangerous game. Daniel knew if the generals uncovered too much, they would strike. Still, he pressed forward, arranging more meetings, ensuring the queen was always surrounded by the creatures that softened her heart. In every bark and every wagging tail, humanity found its shield. It was not steel or fire, but something purer. One evening, Seraphira whispered to Daniel as she cradled Buster in her arms. In my empire, they would call this weakness, yet I feel stronger than ever before. Daniel leaned forward slightly. Then maybe, Majesty, the galaxy has been wrong all along. Her silver eyes locked on his. And for the first time, she did not look like a conqueror. She looked like a woman standing on the edge of a choice. The strategy was working, but danger grew thicker in the shadows. The generals plotted more each day, whispering of betrayal, whispering of action. But Daniel knew there was no turning back now. The pugs had become Earth's weapon, the most unexpected weapon in human history. And through them, a fragile bridge of peace was being built, step by step, wag by wag. The question remained, would the queen cross that bridge? Or would her empire burn it before she could take the final step? Asterisk. The galaxy had always whispered the name of Queen Seraphira with fear. Entire planets bowed to her shadow. Her word meant life or death. But now new whispers spread like fire, not of destruction, not of war, but of something unbelievable. They said the queen had fallen in love with creatures from Earth, small dogs with wrinkled faces and curly tails. At first, soldiers laughed, calling it a rumor, but soon, the truth became impossible to hide. Every time the queen appeared, a pug followed, waddling proudly by her side. Her icy aura was fading. Her tone was changing, and the empire felt it like a storm shifting direction. The generals clenched their fists in secret, knowing their grip was slipping. In the human cities below, people began to notice too. Where once the skies were filled with fear, now alien ships hovered in silence. No bombs dropped, no armies marched. Instead, the queens demanded only one thing, pugs. They sent orders across the stars, commanding their fleets to search for the dogs on Earth. Families who once hid their pets were now guarding them as treasures. Because the fate of the planet seemed tied to their wagging tails, Daniel Reeves became the center of this strange new order. Every meeting he brought more pugs, introducing them like diplomats in fur. The queen listened more to their barks than to her generals, and Daniel used the moment to carefully weave promises of peace. He understood that what no human army could achieve, a single pug could. But in the vast empire beyond Earth, confusion turned to unrest. Alien rulers of other worlds questioned why their queen was changing. Why was she ignoring conquest? Why was she speaking of strange emotions like trust and love? For them, it was dangerous, a sign of weakness. Whispers of rebellion spread in secret halls, and the generals fed those whispers like fire. Seraphira, however, was blind to their schemes. Every evening she spent hours with the small creatures, watching them play. She felt something she had never known before, a peace deeper than victory. She began to dream not of domination, but of gardens, laughter, and companionship for a ruler who had only known cold steel. The warmth was intoxicating. Daniel saw the shift with his own eyes. He realized the queen was no longer the same person who first descended to Earth. She was changing, evolving, as if the pug's love had rewritten her soul. But he also knew danger grew with each passing day. The more she changed, the more her generals would see her as unfit to rule. And unfit queens in alien empires did not live long. The shift was bigger than one woman. It rippled outward, touching her soldiers, her ministers, even the civilians of her empire. For the first time, alien troops stationed on Earth watched humans play with their pets. Some even reached down to touch the creatures, startled at the warmth in their hearts. One soldier whispered to another, "How can something so small feel so powerful?" And in that simple question, entire centuries of fear began to crack. Back in the grand hall, Seraphira stood before her generals, a pug tucked gently under her arm, her glowing eyes softer but stronger. "From this day," she declared, "Earth is not our conquest. It is our ally." The generals stiffened, rage hidden beneath their bows. But her voice carried across the empire like thunder. For the first time, the queen spoke not of fear, but of friendship. The galaxy shifted. An empire built on terror trembled at the sound of laughter. A people who never knew love now saw their ruler carrying a dog with pride. And far beyond the stars, other queens began to wonder if Earth held the key to something greater than power. Yet, in the shadows, the generals sharpened their blades of betrayal. The galaxy was shifting, but they would not allow it to shift forever. The empire was trembling. Across 1,000 worlds, alien soldiers whispered of their queen's strange change. She no longer ruled with icy commands. She no longer demanded endless conquest. Instead, she spoke of peace, of strange earth creatures. That made her heart feel alive, and in every public appearance, she carried a pug, its little face glowing with importance. To the humans, it was a miracle. Wars had stopped. Invasion fleets stayed silent. For the first time in centuries, Earth was safe. But to the generals, it was betrayal. They saw their queen slipping away. Her heart stolen by weakness. Her empire poisoned by dogs. One night, in the darkness of the alien flagship, the generals made their move. They plotted to remove the queen, to restore the empire to fear. They whispered of assassination, of rebellion, of crowning a new ruler who would forget Earth and its pugs. But what they did not understand was that the galaxy itself had already shifted. The seed of love had been planted, and no blade could cut it out. The next day, the generals stormed into the council chamber. They raised their voices, accusing Seraphira of betrayal. "You have abandoned strength," one shouted. "You are ruled by weakness," another hissed. But before they could strike, something unexpected happened. The doors burst open, and dozens of alien soldiers entered. In their arms they carried pugs, each one barking and wriggling. The soldiers laid them at the queen's feet, their eyes glowing not with fear, but with loyalty. One soldier stepped forward and declared, "We have seen what you see, Majesty. These creatures, they make us stronger, not weaker." The generals were stunned, their plan unraveling before their eyes. The queen rose slowly, Buster in her arms, her silver aura blazing with light. "You call this weakness," she said, her voice steady. "But love is not weakness. It is power greater than your fear." The soldiers roared in agreement, their pugs barking as if echoing the truth. For the first time in galactic history, the Empire stood united not in terror, but in affection, the generals fled, their power broken, and in that moment, Earth's destiny was sealed. No longer a target of conquest, it became the heart of a new alliance, an alliance built not on weapons, but on something the galaxy had forgotten. The simple strength of love and loyalty. Daniel stood beside the Queen, his heart racing as he realized what had been achieved. The entire galaxy had changed, not because of armies, not because of science, but because of one small dog. He looked down at Buster, who was wagging his tail proudly, unaware that he had just saved humanity. The Queen looked at Daniel, her silver eyes softer than ever. "You humans," she whispered, "you carried the greatest weapon all along. And you did not even know it." Together they stepped outside. The skies above Earth clear for the first time in months. Alien ships hovered peacefully, their weapons silenced, their soldiers cradling pugs instead of rifles. Children in the streets laughed as the strange silver-skinned aliens knelt to pet the dogs. The world that had once braced for destruction was now filled with joy. The shocking conclusion was undeniable. The strongest empire in the galaxy had been disarmed by wagging tails, sloppy kisses, and wrinkled faces, and Earth, once small and fragile, was now the most protected planet in existence, because no queen, no soldier, no ruler in the galaxy would ever dare harm the home of the Pugs. And so the narrator's voice closed the tale with a truth older than any empire. Sometimes the smallest hearts carry the greatest power, and sometimes victory comes not through war, but through love that no blade can kill.